Hello and welcome to Virtual CONjuration 2020. My name is Darin M. Bush. I am the professor. I'm one of the directors of programming of CONjuration this year and every year so far. I'm going to get into our panel topic in just a second here, which is Faramir didn't go to Elrond. Thank the Valar. Thank you, tech elves. We're going to explain what the heck that means in just a second, but first I want to let our fabulous panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to pick on the mobile Lydia first here. Lydia, why don't you introduce yourself to the CONjuration audience?
Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. First of all, apologies. I'm in my van with a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old driving down to Atlanta. So if you hear wild screeches in the background, that would be why. Hi, I'm Lydia Sherrer. I write a urban fantasy series called Love, Lies, and Hocus Pocus, The Adventures of Lily Singer. 6 books out so far, and so I came to CONjuration originally as a guest author and have absolutely fell in love with it and adored it since. I live up in Kentucky, and we go down to Atlanta every year for it. Children, I love them. And I am a huge, of course, fantasy fan. Read Harry Potter books when I was a kid, like all totally into that. And I was super excited when Darin asked me to be on this panel because I'm like, oh boy, Faramir. I can complain about how the movies ruined him. No.
Yes,
so
we can get to that.
Panel, and yeah, and you guys can go find all my books on the CONjuration like vendor page. It's lots of magical adventure. There's a cat. And we all love talking cats, so.
Excellent. And our other fabulous panelist, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bethany Kesler. I kick around the internet as DJ Gray, which is the world's most open pen name. Probably second only to Sean McGuire's Mira Grant. So in my little signature here, you can see my website, and that's where you can find all of my stuff, from the Patreon to my Twitter to the Facebook page and the blog. I'm around a bunch of places. My first time at CONjuration, actually. I keep meaning to go, but it's also in November, which is historically not a great month for my day job. So I was really excited to be able to get to do this year. So yeah, I write science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction, and yeah, that's me. I'm looking forward to this panel.
Yes, we're looking forward to having you this year and in person in the future, if possible. As some of you know already, I'm Darin M. Bush. I am also a science fiction and fantasy author. I am one of the directors of programming here at CONjuration. I think I might have already said that. I want to let everybody know that we are still doing the House Cup competition this year, even though we're virtual. There are little monitor elves, I call them, doing a fabulous job of helping us out. So if we do, during the panel award, house points to you, which is still an option, even though we're virtual, the monitor elves will help us by taking care of that. I also want to let you guys in on what's going on here with this panel. If you are not familiar with Lord of the Rings or not familiar with Faramir's important role in it, you're about to get an education on that, because I have been warned that our panelists have very strong opinions in several different directions at once about this topic. The premise, the idea I wanted to throw out there was that Faramir, who is Boromir's younger brother, was the one who originally got the, we did a panel a couple hours ago on prophecy, and we actually didn't cover this. He got a prophetic vision dream thing, wasn't explicitly explained, but, and then one time it came to Boromir, and Boromir decided, well, I'm in charge, I'm the older brother, I'm gonna go seek out this Elrond guy. My premise of this panel is that actually was good, that Boromir was like, I'm in charge. Because if Faramir had gone to the Council of Elrond, we would have lost the War of the Ring, and Sauron would be in charge of Middle Earth now. That is my premise. I have a funny feeling that I'm going to get schooled. I don't know if I'll be convinced, but I sense a beatdown from at least from Bethany's eyebrows, if nothing else. So let's start at the beginning here before we get into the beatings, which is I have been reading Lord of the Rings since I was a single digit child, like 8, 9 years old was when my parents introduced this to me. I was raised by a couple of serious nerds, so Lord of the Rings was part of the household culture. What about you? Where did you get started with your exposure to Lord of the Rings? I'm going to pick on Bethany first on this one.
Well, I was right around my teenage years. I spent all my wild, fun teenage years from like 11 to 19 growing up in a foreign country doing foreign aid work. I'm also a voracious reader, so lack of having English books was a problem for all of my teenagers. But I read The Hobbit for one of my online school things and fell in love with it. And then my mom was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, there's more." And I'm like, "Where are these books in this house? I have been over this entire house." My mom's like, "Yeah, I've been hiding them back here because they're mine and they're old." And I'm like, so we started reading them. And yeah, I blitzed through. My mom liked to read books out to us, but I also do not have patience as a virtue. So I kind of was just like waited until she was done reading them to my siblings and just grabbed them and blitzed through them. Fun part is she was still reading the last book when I finished The Two Towers, and that was a problem because I had to wait like 2 weeks before I was able to read, Return of the King. Which, that last line of The Two Towers will never leave my brain. I'm like, Frodo was alive, but captured by the enemy. And I'm just like...
Yeah.
So,
one of the best cliffhangers ever. Okay, Lydia, what about you? Where did you get started with Lord of the Rings?
My mom was reading them out loud to me and my siblings by the time we were 6 or 7. Apologies, my 4-month-old wants me to be holding him, not strapped into a car seat, and there's nothing I can do about it. So we're just gonna be serenaded by him in the background. She read us The Hobbit first when I was about 6 or so. I distinctly remember lying on my tummy on the living room floor with a coloring book and colored pencils, coloring while she read. And then she read us the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I do remember points feeling very bored. Because the Lord of the Rings trilogy is really not fit for young children with shorter attention spans. There's a lot of really long description of things. But overall, I remember really enjoying the story. And when I went back and read it, again and again as I got older and older, I liked it even more. And funny story, I tried to read the Silmarillion when I was a teenager because I'm like, oh, Tolkien wrote it, I'll love it. I almost fell asleep in the first couple pages. And then I went back in my early 20s to try to read it again, and I devoured it within an hour or two. I just consumed it whole, and it just really surprised me the difference and how I enjoyed it between when I was a teenager to when I was an adult. So that's how I got started.
Okay, well then let's excellent, thank you. So let's do this. When I presented the panel idea to you and Bethany, we have a limited amount of time for your answer. When I presented the premise of the panel to you, what was your first reaction?
Oh, my first reaction is Darin, you're wrong. Aragorn is not half elf. I mean, he's not.
Yes, he is.
No, he is not.
He's 1/16th.
No, he's not even 1/16th. Okay, so Elros, Elrond's brother, half elven, right? Elros is 9/16 elvish. Aragon is the 64th down from that line. Aragorn has about as much elvish blood in him as if you threw a single drop of blood into Lake Erie. That's about how much elvish blood Aragorn has in him.
Okay, all right. Well, let's back up a second because that is a different panel. That is exactly why the different panel moniker was created. Because I indicated in the description, not in the description, I indicated to the panelists that Aragorn doesn't count because he's a half elf. And we will, and if you guys are interested in us getting into detail and having that fight next year at CONjuration and having Bethany back to beat me over the head with that, I would love to do that.
I have science data.
That is not this panel, but I will concede that Aragorn, it can be established that he is 999,000th human, little tiny trickle of elfish blood, but Aragorn is in his own category, whether you agree with Bethany or me.
Oh, I totally agree. He's in his own category. He's just not half elf.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what we're really talking about here is the fact that Faramir, who is the star of this discussion, at least was supposed to be, he is the only, except for Aragorn, is the only human who resists the lure of the ring, which we'll get into. We'll get into just in a second here. So Lydia, what about you? Did you have anywhere close to as strong a reaction as Bethany did to my panel idea? I'll take that as a yes.
Very strong reaction. It was your explanation of why you think it was important that it was Boromir, not Faramir, which was that it was Boromir's aggressive action to try and steal the ring. That is what spurred Frodo to do what he did and eventually, save the world. I would argue that Faramir being there instead of Boromir would have been fine. Frodo still would have succeeded. I think the rest of the battle in all the rest of Middle-earth was what would have gone wrong without Faramir being there. I think Faramir is so underrated by everybody. Nobody understands how incredibly smart and wily and capable and loyal and determined and honestly powerful he is. He just is so appreciated by his and basically thrown away as like a patrol guy. Like he could do just as much in everything that Boromir does if it was asked of him, and he would, and he could, and he'd accomplish it. So I think that the fact that if Boromir had lived instead of Faramir, I think things would have gone drastically differently in Minas Tirith, and they might have lost, but for other reasons. The ring might still have been destroyed, but Middle-earth, but they would have lost the war. So I'll mute it now.
Okay. So let me very quickly ask our tech moderator to put that last comment from CONjuration up on the screen, which shows. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
That's where my science data comes from.
I am a math teacher in a previous life, and that is overwhelming for me. For those of you who aren't math related and you're going, I don't get that at all. Well, don't worry about it. He's a very, very tiny bit elvish. So,
am I allowed to give house points to the CONjuration tech elves?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly who that would be to give the house points to, but we'll let the monitors figure that out. But yeah, five points for that math. 5 points, because thank you. Actually, what I'd like for them to do is give them 5.000000008 points if they can figure out how to do that. But Lydia's getting into really the meat of this discussion, which is that Faramir is except for Aragorn, I'll concede that just to get past this part. Faramir is the best man of Gondor, right? Boromir thinks he's the best man. Thank you, Bethany. Boromir thinks he's the best man in Gondor. Faramir actually is. He has every opportunity to take the ring from Frodo, does not. And he doesn't do it for any other reason other than that he just made a promise and he did not know what he was promising and he kept it. My premise for this discussion is that if Faramir had gone to Elrond, then Frodo would not have been so clearly shown how just regular, ordinary men of Gondor were in their ability to be corrupted by the ring. Their ability to be corrupted by the ring is not a vague discussion. The ring wraiths are right there, just off camera, waiting to come on board and get involved. So I think that Boromir is also highly underrated as a character. I think he's incredibly important to the story. And his main role is to be that spokesperson for what Tolkien was trying to tell us about the corruptible hearts of at least the men of Middle-earth. I understand what Lydia's saying about how Faramir may have, he was needed elsewhere during the war. But I really think that Boromir did a great job of being the kind of the poster child for what everyone was trying to tell Frodo the whole time, which is you got to be careful. It's not anybody's fault, but you just have got to be very careful.
Well, see, it's not. I mean, I come at it from the perspective if it's not necessarily who they, it's not necessarily kind of like the different who they were. Like they're not interchangeable. I mean, there is a case to be made that with Faramir not succumbing to the ring, that the party then never splits, which means Isengard continues unchecked unless Gandalf could rouse the Ents without the Hobbits' help. And then with Theoden without Aragorn, Rohan gets wiped out and never comes to Gondor's aid, and Aragorn never takes the Dimholt road, so Gondor then falls, and the Fellowship falls at the Black Gate. The ring returns to Sauron. So it's less, I think it's less about personalities, more as it is kind of like all the like ripples affecting coming out from that change. So yeah, I'm with Lydia. The ring very well could have been destroyed. It would have been a way more uphill battle than it already was.
Mm-hmm.
But the entire rest of Middle Earth would be gone. Because, that's one of the things I think the movies actually did really well in the extended versions, because we're not talking about the theatrical versions. It's to show the brotherhood between Boromir and Faramir. And also kind of Denethor's relationship to the two of them, because it's speculated that part of the reason why Denethor just doesn't treat Faramir as anything but an afterthought is that he reminds Denethor too much of his mother, Findulas of Dol Amroth.
Mm-hmm.
And his uncle, Imrail, Prince of Dol Amroth, is probably the only person besides Aragorn who doesn't underestimate Faramir.
Yes.
So,
absolutely. Did you say, I don't think Gandalf has underestimated Faramir either. Did I hear you say him? But
okay. No, well, Gandalf is a Maya, and therefore in his own separate case, because he's just unfathomable. Like, Maya are super weird.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
it's kind of, him, Rastaban, Melian, we could go all day on just the weirdness of Maya in general. But yeah, no.
Okay, so I can't believe they decided to put my own chat comment on the screen there. But that is really true. Is there was a moment where Lydia was making a face, and it looked like she was going, "What the heck is Darin talking about?" Lydia, was that accurate? Was there a moment where you're like, where I lost you?
Honestly, right now my child is screaming so hard it's hard to concentrate. But babies don't like car rides. But honestly, Bethany, I don't think necessarily if it had been Faramir instead of Boromir, the whole rest of Middle Earth would have failed, in the sense that I think that people who have spent their entire lives studying Middle Earth and the history of Middle Earth, which I have not, so I can't give examples, could go through and be like, if it was Faramir instead of Boromir, this, and this could have happened in theory, and things would have been saved, but in a different way. It's just that all we know is what happened, is what Tolkien wrote. And so, yes, maybe Aragorn wouldn't have gone through, I'm sorry, the name escapes me, but gotten the dead.
The Dimholt road.
But maybe he could have saved things another way. And we just don't know. So I more than I'd say Bethany on that front. I think that Middle Earth, I think the war still could have been won. But I definitely think that with the way Tolkien set up the characters and the situation and the hundreds of years of politics that happened before that led up to it, that it would have been very difficult. For instance, so when the orcs attacked, would Faramir have died? If it was Faramir, would Faramir have died? Or would he have survived? Perhaps. I can't remember specifically. It would have been likely Faramir would have died. Because the orcs were just overwhelming numbers.
And he didn't have the horn, and he didn't have the horn of Gondor. Boromir has the Horn of Gondor. So the horn would not then have
there's that too.
sounded to bring everybody back.
Exactly.
But
So-
also,
Yeah.
but I would also argue that if Faramir was there with the Fellowship, then there wouldn't have been a need for them to all of a sudden panic and scatter like they did, because Faramir wouldn't have tried to take the ring from Frodo. Right?
But then again, think about what happened when they all split up. Is that they were all, because I mean, with Faramir there, I think eventually there's no other way for things to go out with them all making it to Mordor, because they would not all make it to Mordor. So, so Frodo and Sam splitting off is something that it's like a static point. They're always going to split off. It just depends on where. But but again, the thing with, Merry and Pippin were inspired to do what they did because Boromir was like the big brother who was teaching them how to fight with swords and literally died defending them. So that's and that can't be understated. Like,
right.
That's a
Well,
really big thing.
Go ahead, Lydia.
I was gonna go off of that. Bethany's. I mean, I think Faramir could have had a similar relationship with the hobbits, but if the hobbits had not, basically Fangorn is the only reason that Sauron fell. I really think there's no way Sauron could have been defeated in any other way if it weren't for the Ents. So that's a critical point in the sense that, if Faramir had somehow stopped the orcs and the hobbits had not been taken, then, it doesn't matter who or what doesn't matter at all. But, Sauron would have survived. Rohan probably would have fallen. They wouldn't have come to Minas Tirith's aid. Sweetheart, not yet.
So Lydia, let me ask one question. Are you talking about Saruman the White Wizard?
Yes. Apologies if I said Sauron. I'm sorry if I said Sauron instead of Saruman. Yeah,
it's okay. It's Saruman. So it's
Orthanc. There we go.
Orthanc. Yeah. So no, but I think, Lydia, you're exactly correct, is that if Merry and Pippin had not been dragged off to Fangorn, then Fangorn wouldn't have gotten involved at all, and Saruman would have absolutely been able to crush Rohan, and then Rohan wouldn't have been there for the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. I mean, there's a direct line. It isn't that complicated to see that Merry and Pippin have to be brave when the orcs attack the Fellowship. They have to be prepared to stand and fight, and the reason they're able to do that is because Boromir is there with them, and he has been training them and teaching them how to survive in the wilderness. Aragorn did it when they first met Aragorn. Boromir took over later.
But do you really think Faramir wouldn't have done that? Like, I think Faramir would have done the same thing as Boromir in that specific instance. Maybe not with the exact same, outgoing personality. In terms of what would have gone differently with Faramir versus Boromir, I honestly don't think that's the biggest point. I don't think that would have been the biggest change. I think the biggest change would have come more in Faramir wouldn't have been there in Return of the King to guide the hobbits and help them before they went up into Minas Morgul, and it would have been Boromir probably would have been in Minas Tirith and might have made rash decisions that would have kept Gandalf from being able to guide them in the right direction.
In fact, there's an excellent.
Kept his dad in check.
Well, but there's an excellent. Dan Newcomb has an excellent comment in there about Boromir being an Ithilien, and I would like to see that come up on the screen if we can. And it says, "What if Boromir was the one and just said, okay, just kill Gollum?"
Well, see,
another very good point
case,
that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah,
ahead,
well,
Bethany.
in that case, then technically the only way the ring would have been destroyed is if Sam decided to dropkick Frodo into the volcano. Because Frodo decides to take the ring for himself at the very end. The only reason it actually does get destroyed is because Gollum's fighting with him, bites off his finger, and then takes a wrong step and falls.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's, Boromir and Faramir are not interchangeable by any means, but if you, and to a certain extent, I can kind of see some of Boromir's enthusiasm at dealing with the hobbits is like, is because he misses his little brother.
Yeah.
But we've got, it's the chain of events, cause and effect, the chain of events afterwards. That's why it was so important that it was Boromir there. And why it was Faramir, in the right place, right time. I think Britt Nelson Lewis just said this. Exactly. Her comment is, by the way, 5 points to Hufflepuff, because you said you were Hufflepuff earlier. So 5 points to you, Britt Nelson Lewis. And 5 points to Dan Newcomb, because that's a great question.
Yeah, I was actually about to say he should get 5 points for encouraging me to do these panels.
Yeah.
So yeah, Britt's point is very good.
Yeah, and then because it's that chain of events. Because if we didn't have that exact thing, because Boromir's death inspired Merry and Pippin, which then inspired Fangorn, which then inspired them all there, and with trying to get Merry and Pippin back, you then have Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli on the path they need to take. So it's the chain of effects, it's the cause and effect thing. But also, if Faramir is with the Fellowship and something happens, then he might not be in the same place where he can then run into Éowyn and kind of assist there with her. Because I think their meeting is really, really important.
Yes.
Not just for the future of the realm, as it were, but also for Éowyn's kind of healing, in a sense.
What we need to remember is that Tolkien was very big on the long-term effects and the repercussions of these relationships. And what ends up happening with Éowyn and Faramir, which is another good point, is that they tie back together Gondor and Rohan.
Yep.
Because Gondor and Rohan's estrangement and competition is actually part of the history of the War of the Ring that isn't on camera, but it's very important to the overarching story. Yeah,
and then also, it's not just them. It's not just Faramir and Éowyn. It's also then Lothiriel who marries Éomer. So it's the preferential sister exchange. So you've got Faramir doesn't have a sister. He does have a girl cousin, and she marries Éomer. So it just ties them together that much more to provide a more stable base for whenever Aragorn shuffles off this mortal coil and it goes down to his son. You have that built-in. You've got that built-in support base already. Is because you're going to have a decent steward. You're going to have decent princesses of Dol Amroth. You're going to have a decent fellow king in Rohan and a staunch ally. So, and let's also not forget that a lot of what Tolkien is drawing from too is from his own wartime experiences, and then kind of drawing back there, because a lot of wartime experiences, no operations plan ever survives the first offensive, so you kind of have to pivot a lot and kind of work with what you've got, and so that's kind of, and that follows with the chain of events. So
I think that we have to remember that this isn't an actual historical account where you have all of these. It is. It's a historical account in this context. But what ends up happening is we know that Tolkien is deliberately trying to get some things done in his story. He's always said he doesn't like metaphors or allegory, but he likes for things to be applicable. And I think the relationship between Boromir and Faramir is fabulous. I have a younger brother. I don't cast myself as Boromir, but I do have a younger brother. And I think the way that Boromir and Faramir love each other and the complications of that brotherly love are absolutely wonderful. They're a great part of the story. Whenever Tolkien talks about how the books are too short, that's the first thing I think of. We did not get enough of Boromir being a nice guy, because everybody liked him. Everybody liked him. but they didn't actually really, but we didn't get a chance to really see that, but we just had to trust Merry and Pippin and his brother and everybody, that he was actually, considering who he was and what he was, pretty nice guy. He was definitely a noble guy. He was absolutely an honorable person. He was just, he had that arrogance thing going when he was on camera. Faramir's relationship to him is, to me, completely authentic. Faramir says to Frodo, I know my brother, meaning I know what's wrong with my brother. And he says, I don't care. I love him. I would die for him. I love him. He's my older brother. He's a captain of Gondor, all that stuff. To me, it's so authentic and so real that I really get upset when people say to me, like, well, Boromir was kind of a jerk. No. Well,
no, because essentially what happened, if you read between the lines, between what we get in the text and then what we also see portrayed on screen between the two fabulous actors in the extended versions, once Finduilas died, Denethor checked out completely of parenting and only really came back to it because, Boromir did a good thing. So he's like, yes, good, yes, whoa. But but other than that, they raised themselves after their mom died for pretty much. So that's why you see that really deep partnership between, brotherhood between the two of them. They've always got each other's backs. That same cannot be said for their father having their backs. So
yeah, there's a very sad moment, and then I'll get off the soapbox. It's a very sad moment where Faramir says, we could have switched places, and Denethor goes, yeah, you should have switched places. It's like, okay, it's a heartbreaking moment in the story. It doesn't get enough play in Faramir's motivation. Lydia, what about you? Anything to throw in at this point? I didn't want to leave you out. Uh-oh. Okay. So we'll come back to Lydia in just a second. So Bethany, you were, oh, well, that's too bad. So you were saying earlier, okay, let me go back a second. Do you actually think that the idea that it had to be Boromir to go to Elrond, do you think there's any merit in that? I know we kind of got a little sidetracked. Okay.
Yeah. And because Boromir also serves the purpose of reminding Aragorn who he is. Aragorn has been running from his destiny for so long at this point. He has been, he's just like the epitome of the reluctant anti-hero. He does not want to do this. He's been born for it. He's been bred for it. He's been raised up to do this. And he does not want this job. But, and he's been in and out, between with Rohan, serving with them, kind of with that, and then up with his people in the north, the Dunedain of Arnor. But he hasn't come south to Gondor. Nowhere in there do we hear, or can we even think of, in a long time. He tells Boromir, I have seen these. I have heard this, but it hasn't been for but we get the sense it hasn't been for a long time.
If you read the Annals of the Kings and Rulers, which is an appendix, he does serve in the army of Gondor in that story, but it's Denethor is a young man, and Boromir is basically an older teenager, I guess, something like that at the time.
Yeah. So he's there. He's also there to remind, to be kind of this very visible, living, breathing reminder to Aragorn of his responsibilities. Because Minas Tirith has been through the ringer. There's a reason why there's in their themes, Rohan's theme, in the score from the movies is very deep, very noble, also very, very sad. Minas Tirith is no less noble, but where Rohan's has that element of sorrow, Minas Tirith has an element of desperation. They are clinging to everything they can by their fingernails. And so, it has to be Boromir to be to kind of be that living reminder. Because Faramir, I think, could have done something similar, but Faramir is also a little too much like Aragorn.
Yeah.
So for him to get that, because he could be able to just pass it off then. But Boromir needs to be that person to give him that final push. Just like Chris Seconder said, and I'm giving him an extra 5 points because yes. So he
Well,
needs that push. So yeah, Boromir,
but
while dying is tragic. And one can only hope he has like some little bastards running around somewhere, so the bloodline isn't completely gone on his side. And you can take that headcanon from me, out of my cold dead hands. But
well,
actually, Dan, no,
no.
survive.
That's too. Bringing Sean Bean into this is too meta, even for me.
No, but
I can't get behind that one. But hold on a second. No, he's great. He's great. His death scenes. He's died in 700 movies. He's awesome at dying. But here's the really weird thing about the Sean Bean thing, and then we got to get back to Faramir. Is when they cast Sean Bean, I went, oh, that's typecasting. It's too perfect. Anyway, so, but you talk about Boromir. You talk about Boromir pushing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you be more specific? I think I know what you're talking about, but for our audience's sake, Boromir didn't just push.
Oh no, he was there like all up in his grill, going,
yeah,
where you been, dude? Where you been?
I mean,
you see, so you asked for example. So you see it in the Council of Elrond scenes where Boromir goes up and he's looking at the sword, Isildur's sword.
Yeah,
and he's looking at that and going, and you can just see on his face, you're just like, wow, just it's blowing his mind to be able to stop and like touch the thing. Like it's like us being able to like reach out with a finger and touch the Magna Carta. The extreme significance and the weight of all of that hits you, and you're just like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
But and the fact where he is arguing passionately, Gondor has no king. Gondor needs no king, because he's angry and he's bitter, and that's and that comes through as well to be kind of like a hard check against Aragorn. It's like, yeah, dude.
Yeah, I mean, he literally in the Council of Elrond looks Aragorn up and down and goes, "Who are you?" And Aragorn's like, "Not sure yet, but I'm working on it."
whereas Legolas, everyone's favorite wingman, is stepping up and going, "Yeah, no, this is your king, dude." And
okay, so Britt's comment about Boromir and Aragorn flashed up on the screen there for a second. And Britt, I'm sorry, I've got to disagree. Part of the problem of the Council of Elrond and Boromir's relationship to the Fellowship is that nobody knew who Aragorn was. He wasn't supposed to. Thank you, technicians. He wasn't supposed to know who Aragorn was at all. So the fact that Boromir comes along and says, "The king's been dead for generations. My dad is in charge. I'm going to be in charge. We don't need a king," as Bethany said. All of that is really key to Aragorn's character arc, because Aragorn appreciated and said during the council specifically, Aragorn said to Boromir, you don't know that there's 75 other groups of people fighting against the Dark One, not just you. It's just that we are intentionally hiding ourselves because it's Sauron. It isn't just it isn't some other group of humans that are at war with you. It is Sauron. He is a Maya. We have to stay hidden. And so Boromir's lack of appreciation is not the pushing that we're referring to. It's Boromir's, we don't need you.
Yeah.
That really makes Aragorn go, okay, wait a minute.
Maybe. But also, you see this also kind of like in pretty much in all their interactions, like in Moria, on the mountain, you get this through, as at the very end, where he says, "I would have followed you, my captain, my brother, my king." Mm-hmm. And that moment, like Boromir's death was this crucial moment, not just for Merry and Pippin, not just for Frodo and Sam, not just for the Fellowship at large, but also specifically for Aragorn, as he comes up to actually accepting the mantle he's been fighting. He's been fighting against. Because he's Dan Newcomb said Faramir sees the day-to-day skirmishes, not the larger battle. Yeah, exactly. Boromir can't see the whole board. All Boromir knows is that we have been doing that. We have been holding on to this territory. We have been the front of this battle for so long. We're holding on to this with our fingertips for so long. We don't need you. We don't need a king. What we need is allies. What we need is support. What we need is like a million more men to fight this battle.
Yeah.
But well,
it is unfortunate Boromir doesn't realize that he has that, but not in the form in which he wants it. And speaking of not getting what you want, I have bad news, which is we're out of time.
Yeah. But see, here's the other thing, real fast. Here's the last thing I will say. Is that and that's the difference between the two brothers. Boromir is not looking at the whole board, while Faramir is looking at the entire chessboard. Boromir is only focusing on his very next move. Yeah,
absolutely. That is absolutely part of it. So, guys, I'm sorry we didn't resolve the question at all. That wasn't really the point, though. I would like to thank Bethany and Lydia, our world traveler, our baby transporter, for participating in this panel with me. I love doing these kinds of deep Lord of the Rings conversations. If you would like to have Bethany back next year to beat me over the head with more Lord of the Rings truth, please let the bosses know. We love doing these discussions, especially for an audience that has great things to say in the chat. We've got just a couple of minutes.
Next.
We can go throw down on the Silmarillion real good. So let me do this. Let me let you guys know that Lydia, I'm sorry that she wasn't able to be here for the whole thing. Technical problems, obviously. But Lydia's got a store in the vendors hall in Bethany. I'm sure she would want everybody to know about that. Bethany, where can people find you on the interwebs if they want to disagree with you or agree with you or whatever?
Yeah, it's in my name sign, which is deejgray.com. It's DEEJ gray.com. That's my website. You can find my Patreon for short stories. You can find my Twitter. You can find my Facebook page. I love talking about Lord of the Rings and all the ins and outs. And thank you, Britt. Totally going to be partisan and give you another 5 points because I can. The power is mine. The other thing I will say, if you are really super into Lord of the Rings and you really love deep cuts, a friend of mine has been doing a podcast essentially going, Feather explains the Silmarillion. So it's amazing. It's awesome. She goes through it line by line, explaining context, explaining not just Watsonian context, but also Doylistic context for the entire Silmarillion. We just got up to the Kings of Numenor, and it's fantastic. So
excellent.
So it's at foundfeather.patreon.com. It's free. Anyone can listen to it. She just kind of has it set up that if you want to throw her money in the tip jar, you can do that. She's got a Ko-fi page as well. But yeah, definitely check out her stuff. She put up a couple of episodes this weekend, and it's amazing, guys.
That's great.
It's amazing.
Okay, guys, I'm sorry. We gotta cut this off. We gotta let the next panel get locked and loaded. But Bethany, thank you for coming to CONjuration. I'm looking forward to you coming back next year. And it sounds like from the chat that a lot of other people are too. Yeah. So at this point,
I have a Sunday panel, guys.
Sunday panel. I think I have a Sunday panel too. Yeah. Somehow. All right, guys, we're gonna say goodbye. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with us. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.